Thank you all very much for joining us today. I'm Tim Taylor, co-director of the NorCal Clean Cities Coalition. And just before we get started, I wanted to ask folks to please put your questions in the chat if you have them. We hope to have some time at the end for a Q&A. We have a great presentation coming, and with that, I would like to introduce your welcome person for today, my co-director, Keith Leech. So, Keith, I think it's you're on.
Thank you, Tim. I'd also like to recognize Aaron he's our project manager for our Fleet Academy Hub of Knowledge program. Welcome to the first in a series of webinars that we are producing throughout 2026 in collaboration with our partner professional associations, regulatory agencies, and our sustaining sponsors. NorCal Clean Cities, formerly Sacramento Clean Cities, is affiliated with the Department of Energy's Clean Cities program, a government industry partnership designed to reduce petroleum consumption in the transportation sector. There are currently almost 70 coalitions nationwide that work with government agencies and private companies to identify mutual interests and meet the objectives of reducing the use of imported oil, developing regional economic opportunities, and improving air quality. NorCal Clean Cities serves communities in the greater Sacramento metro area, as well as communities across Northern California. We are currently in the process of expanding our areas of service beyond our current areas of Sacramento, Placer, El Dorado, Yolo, Solano, Butte, and Sutter counties, north to the Oregon border and to the eastern border of Nevada. The Fleet Academy Hub of Knowledge is a program being implemented by a partnership between the Northern California Clean Cities Coalition, the Silicon Valley Clean Cities Coalition, and the U.S. Department of Energy. Over a 3-year period, the Clean Cities Coalitions will conduct a number of educational events, both in-person and virtual, to help fleet managers gain useful information from nationally recognized fleet professionals about operating their vehicle fleets more efficiently and sharing their experiences with the challenges and complexities of implementing zero emissions technologies. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Mr. David Worthington, Fleet Manager of Santa Clara County and the current chair of the Northern California chapter of the Municipal Equipment Maintenance Association. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Keith. Good morning, everyone. As Keith said, I'm David Worthington. I'm the chair of the board of directors for the Northern California Municipal Equipment Maintenance Association, better known as MEMA NorCal. I will be one of the moderators today to help with having your questions addressed related to today's topic on the latest CARB regulations and supporting programs. I think we're all excited to hear the latest directly from CARB staff and look forward to what we can learn today. Welcome to the first of a series of monthly webinars to provide useful and timely information for fleet professionals to manage and operate their fleets. I'm excited about the partnership of multiple associations that we have brought together to collaboratively work in sharing information and distributing it to the largest group of fleet professionals possible. Thank you to NorCal Clean Cities and Communities, East Bay Clean Cities, Silicon Valley Clean Cities, San Francisco Clean Cities, MEMA, NAFA, PFSA, APWA, and the California General Services Association, and the sustaining sponsors of this webinar series. Also, thank you to all the volunteers that make the webinars possible. Beyond these webinars, MEMA NorCal is working on a larger in-person collaborative event later this year at Sonoma Raceway. We hope to share the details of the event in the coming months, and we'll distribute it to all the Clean Cities organizations to share as well. Thank you to all that are joining us today for ensuring our respective agencies have reliable and clean emissions transportation equipment to provide critical services to the communities we work, live, travel within California. Quoting Bradley Northrop, who is a leader in our industry, "They all walk without us." Thank you for joining us today as we all learn about the latest from CARB, which includes the Drive Forward Initiative, the California Clean Construction Program, ACF updates, zero emission forklift regulation, and the clean truck check program. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and turn it over to CARB staff and have them provide us some great presentations and new information. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much, David. My name is Adil Mahmood. I work for the California Air Resources Board as a staff air pollution specialist. I want to give a big thank you to NorCal Clean Cities and Communities for giving us the opportunity to join this webinar. And I'm looking forward to the series of webinars. I was able to view one of their recent webinars with Geotab and several other fleets, and I thought it was very informative. So I'm really looking forward to what else they have planned with their partners. So today we'll be talking about several different topics, the new Drive Forward initiative that we have, the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation applicable to state and local government fleets, the zero emission forklift regulation applicable to state and local government fleets, and also the clean truck check regulation. So we'll start with discussing our new Drive Forward initiative. Just some history about how we got here. With federal actions targeting 3 of our Clean Air Act waivers, California is not backing down from its goal to protect public health. In addition to pursuing legal actions challenging the federal resolutions that disapproved 3 waiver actions, we are pursuing every available avenue to advance clean technologies and achieve emission reductions California needs to protect the health and welfare of its residents. This slide provides a brief overview of what led CARB to create the Drive Forward initiative. On June 12, 2025, Governor Newsom signed Executive Order N-27-25, reaffirming California's commitment to deploy zero-emission vehicle technologies to improve air quality, especially in communities disproportionately impacted by pollution. It directs CARB to develop new regulations consistent with state and federal law that reduce emissions of greenhouse gases, criteria pollutants, and toxics. It also directed government agencies to report to Governor Newsom with additional recommended actions to support zero-emission vehicle market development. In response to the governor's executive order, CARB launched the ZEV Forward initiative, a collaborative effort between the public and state government to emphasize that a strong zero-emission vehicle market is essential to meeting California's clean air goals. CARB staff organized the ZEV Forward dialogue sessions, bringing together expertise from the public, industry, and multiple state agencies. These sessions provided an opportunity to exchange ideas, identify challenges, and explore ways to advance clean vehicle technology together. The ZEV Forward effort informed the recommendation report that was submitted to Governor Newsom and published on CARB's ZEV Forward webpage on August 19, 2025. The report focused on recommendations in 6 areas: private investment, incentives, infrastructure, fuel pricing, regulations, and procurement of ZEVs by state and local government fleets, and included recommended actions to further light-duty, medium-duty, and heavy-duty ZEV adoption. Building on the foundation established through ZEV Forward and in response to the directives of the executive order, CARB is launching the Drive Forward initiative. The new initiative continues the state's commitment to meeting both state and national air quality standards, fulfilling California's climate and clean air goals, and protecting public health through strong vehicle standards. Drive Forward will advance this work by supporting the development of light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicle regulations, incentive programs, outreach and education, and complementary programs and policies that enable clean vehicle deployment. This effort will build on existing tools and resources essential to accelerating the advancement of clean technologies. A strong focus of the initiative is collaboration across all sectors, from communities, public agencies, utilities, industry partners, etc. It is critical that we work together to develop programs that support clean transportation for all. CARB aims to listen, build trust, and form and strengthen lasting partnerships that ensure public and stakeholder priorities are reflected in our work, and that all of us benefit from the state's clean air and climate goals. Here are some recent events that we had. We had a couple workshops last year that covered incentive programs, heavy-duty standards and strategies. There was also another workshop that covered light-duty standards. Using this QR code, you can go to our main Drive Forward webpage where you can see upcoming events and updates regarding Drive Forward. We hope to see you at future events and look forward to working with you. Additionally, if you are interested in holding a one-on-one meeting with CARB, you can request one through this website to further discuss the Drive Forward initiative and give your input on the direction that we're thinking of taking. We look forward to collaborating with you in the future. And if there's any questions regarding Drive Forward, please let me know. Okay, as we will discuss the California Air Resources Board, as we'll discuss in the next presentation, the California Air Resources Board Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation requires state and local government fleets to increase the use of zero-emission technology in their medium and heavy-duty vehicles. State fleets use vehicle procurement process, a vehicle procurement process established by the Department of General Services, or DGS, which leverages the state's purchasing power to secure competitive pricing and favorable purchase terms. Local government fleets also have the option to use the state's procurement process, though many do not. To gauge awareness in the DGS process and interest to participate in future efforts to improve its ease of use and accessibility, CARB invites state and local government fleets to participate in a short survey. To respond to the survey, please use the link or QR code provided here. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. This is a survey that we have ongoing right now just to learn more about why state and local fleets are not using the DGS procurement process, and we'd love to receive some feedback to see how that process could be improved and have more fleets, local government fleets, use that process. And before I get into the ACF presentation, I also wanted to cover a new program that we have known as California Clean Construction. It's a voluntary recognition program offered by CARB. It highlights construction projects that reduce air pollution and support community sustainability goals without creating new regulations or changing how construction projects are permitted or enforced. It's a statewide program that recognizes construction projects using the zero-emission off-road equipment. Participation is voluntary. California Clean Construction focuses on recognition rather than enforcement, allowing project teams to choose how they meet program goals. On the slide, it shows if you'd like to learn more, you can please reach out to our air pollution specialist, Holmes Bassett, or you can scan the QR code or visit this URL to learn more about the program. It's just launched recently. The guidelines were just posted at the end of last year, and recent updates were made to the website. If you do have any construction projects coming up and are interested in participating in the program, I definitely urge you to take a look and reach out to us with any questions. I'll go ahead and pause right now before I get into the next ACF presentation to see if there's any questions about the Drive Forward topics I just covered.
Adil, I don't see anything I don't see any questions in chat.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen, so it's, okay. Great. Then I will go ahead and get started with the next presentation then. Yeah, thank you so much. So amendments to the ACF regulation were recently adopted, which would repeal parts of the regulation applying to federal or private fleets, including requirements for drayage trucks. The amendments are expected to be effective before January 2027. The state and local government fleets portion of ACF would remain subject to amendments under AB 1594, which preserve CARB's authority to provide added flexibility for most public utility agency utilities. Consistent with its mission to reduce air pollution and protect public health, CARB encourages all to continue reducing emissions, and we look forward to partnering with you in these efforts. So who does it apply to? That would be state and local government agencies, which means a city, county, public utility, special district, local agency or district, and any department, division, public corporation, or public agency of the state of California. It would apply to any of those entities if they own, operate, or lease at least one or more vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 8,500 pounds. There are excluded vehicles, vehicles that are excluded from the regulatory requirements. That would be school buses as defined in California Vehicle Code, Section 545, emergency vehicles as defined in California Vehicle Code, Section 165. And although there are many different types of vehicles that are used in emergencies, the ones that would be excluded from regulatory requirements are only those that meet the specific requirements listed in the California Vehicle Code. Vehicles awaiting sale, military tactical vehicles, historical vehicles, dedicated snow removal vehicles, certain two-engine vehicles, heavy cranes, transit vehicles subject to the innovative Clean Transit regulation, vehicles, and lastly, vehicles subject to the zero-emission airport shuttle regulation. So the default option for compliance is known as the ZEV purchase schedule. It requires that in 2024, 50% of purchases must be zero emission or near zero emission vehicles. That means the other half can be combustion powered through 2027. And what I mean by near zero emission vehicles is a plug-in hybrid that can achieve a minimum all-electric range. Starting in 2027, all purchases made would need to be zero emissions or near zero emission vehicles. Through the 2035 model year, near zero emission vehicles are counted as zero emission vehicles. However, agencies that are in designated counties, highlighted here in red, or fleets that have 10 or fewer vehicles are exempt from purchase requirements until 2027, but they must report in truckers now. Please note that amendments to the regulation have recently been adopted, which modify these purchase requirements, which we'll see on the next screen. So this slide looks very similar to the last one, but the key thing to point out here are the dates above those chevron arrows. Previously, the 50% requirement only went from 2024 to 2027. That's now been extended through 2029. So the 50% requirement is in effect from 2024 to 2029. Starting January 1st, 2030, the 100% purchase requirement would be in effect. This would also extend the purchase requirement for fleets in the designated counties or fleets that have 10 or fewer vehicles until 2030. So information on reporting requirements, fleets must report to the truck regulation upload and reporting system, also known as truckers. The initial reporting deadline was April 1st, 2024, with an annual reporting deadline of April 1st through 2045. What needs to be reported within 30 days of occurrence includes vehicles added to the fleet, any vehicles permanently removed from the fleet, backup vehicles that exceed allowable mileage, and vehicles that are converted to zero-emission vehicles. Some important considerations if you are on this compliance pathway, the ZEV purchase schedule. existing vehicles in the fleet and existing compliant internal combustion vehicles in the fleet can be operated indefinitely. There's no useful life retirement requirement based on this option. So mileage or years in service won't require you to retire the vehicle. That was a factor in the other parts of the regulations, which would be repealed. But for state and local government fleets, you're able to continue to operate the existing vehicles in your fleet. There is early and excess action credit that's available. If you were to purchase zero emission vehicles in excess of your purchase requirements, it would count 1-for-1 towards the purchase of a future combustion powered vehicle. For example, if you purchase 10 vehicles in 2026, when the 50% purchase requirement is in effect, you would need 5 zero emission vehicles. But if you purchase 6, which would be one in excess of that requirement, that would allow you to purchase one vehicle when the 100% purchase requirement is in effect. There's compliance flexibilities available, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. Compliance is assessed at the end of the year, and it's based on all purchases made during a calendar year. And once again, also non-transit vehicles owned by transit agencies subject to the ICT regulation are exempt through January 1st, 2030. The second compliance pathway for the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation is known as the ZEV milestones option, which is a more flexible approach available to state and local government agencies. Under this option, a certain portion of their fleet needs to be composed of zero or near zero emission vehicles. It provides flexibility to comply regardless of vehicle age or mileage. Once again, there is no retirement requirement based on age or mileage if you choose this option as well. ZEV requirements are phased in based on ZEV suitability by vehicle type, which will be more clear in the next slide, as fleets must meet ZEV milestones as a percent of the California fleet. This provides more flexibility to add combustion-powered vehicles beyond 2027. And I want to point out that the reporting deadline, if you're on this option, is actually February 1st rather than April 1st if you're on the default ZEV purchase schedule. Fleets can permanently opt into the milestones option in truckers through January 1st, 2030. And you must waive the right to statutory useful life for vehicles, which I'll explain more in the next slides. So here we can see the ZEV milestones purchase schedule. As you can see, requirements are more aggressive for well-suited vehicles and delayed for more specialized or long-distance vehicles. As you can see, the different types in the group. For example, group 1 is box trucks and vans, vehicles that are more suited for electrification or to be used as zero-emission vehicles. And group 3 has the larger Class 8 vehicles and specialty vehicles. The phase-in for zero-emission vehicle requirements happens gradually over the next 2 decades as percentages increase as time goes on. As long as ZEV milestones are met, fleet owners have considerable flexibility with the rest of their vehicles. Fleets can prioritize which vehicles to electrify and can purchase combustion-powered engines as long as they meet the overall phase-in requirement. Please note that there is no requirement to retire vehicles based on age or mileage, but fleets may be required to remove combustion-powered vehicles from their fleet in order to meet the ZEV milestones requirement. For example, if a combustion-powered vehicle was purchased in 2040, you would need to remove it from the fleet by 2042 when the ZEV milestone requirement is 100%. So it's important to consider, when you're going to purchase those vehicles and when you may have to remove them from your fleet. So this slide illustrates how the milestone schedule is applied to a mixed fleet of 100 vehicles. And I'm just picking out certain years here, 2025, 29, 2033, and onward. There are milestones requirements in years in between, as we had seen here in the previous slide. If I could go back here, this is the complete table. And once again, this example here is not using all of those years. It's just choosing specific years as an example. So like I said, there's a fleet of 100 vehicles, 60 in Group 1, 20 in Group 2, and 20 in Group 3. Then you can see on the bottom row the number of ZEVs required in each year. So in 2025, this fleet would need 10% of vehicles in Group 1 to be zero emission vehicles. 10% of 60 is 6, which would require 6 zero emission vehicles by 2025. Skipping forward to 2029, there would be 15 in Group 1 and 2, there would be 15 required for Group 1 and 2 vehicles required for Group 2, which is a total of 17. And what I really want to focus on here is that 17 number does not need to be met by purchasing 15 vehicles in Group 1 and 2 in Group 2. Those numbers are just used to determine the total number of ZEVs that you need in your fleet. So that 17 can actually be met with 17 vehicles in Group 1. It could be 5 vehicles in Group 1, 5 vehicles in Group 2, and 7 vehicles in Group 3. The numbers in the table are just used to determine that ZEV milestones number in the bottom row. Any vehicles from any group can be used to meet that number in the bottom row. Also, one note about calculations, we use standard rounding conventions. So let's say you have 10 vehicles and a 25% requirement, that would be 2.5, which would be rounded up to 3. So the ACF regulation contains a number of exemptions and extensions that are available. These provisions address a variety of circumstances. Some of the more common ones are ZEV availability, where a vehicle is not available. A certain vehicle configuration is not available as a ZEV. The daily usage exemption, which can be used if there is not a battery electric vehicle that can meet your fleet's daily power needs, which would be based on your range or amount of power you use each day, which would be measured in fuel consumption. And if you have backup vehicles that operate for less than 1,000 miles or delays in infrastructure due to construction or other delays, so those are some of the more common ones that we get asked about, but there are several others listed here that are available to you. Most of these provisions, to apply, you need to contact our Cruckers at arb.ca.gov address to assess the criteria. And please note that the recent amendments to the regulation would expand many of these compliance flexibilities. Those amendments are expected to be effective before 2027. And this slide here just kind of summarizes what's going on with the amendments. So we did have a board hearing on September 25th, 2025. The amendments would repeal the parts of the ACF regulation applying to federal or private fleets, including requirements for drayage trucks. As previously mentioned, the amendments would extend the ZEV purchase requirement by 3 years and delay the 100% ZEV purchase requirement to 2030. Also, this extends the exemption for small fleets and designated low population counties until 2030. The amendments will also expand the compliance flexibilities that I described on the last slide. CARB is currently finalizing the amendments. There should be a 15-day package that's released in early 2026 so that the public and stakeholders, everyone could comment and provide more feedback. And the amendments are expected to be finalized and effective before January 1st, 2027. Details regarding our amendments can be seen on our website, seen here. You can also sign up for our ZEV Fleet listserv which would give you email updates about what's going on with the amendments and when the 15-day package will be released. And then if there are any questions that you have, you can always reach out to our CEF-Fleet email address at ceffleet@arb.ca.gov or call our phone number listed here. And if there's any questions regarding ACF, I'd be happy to take those now before we jump into our next presentation.
As of this minute, Adil, it doesn't appear that there's any question in the chat.
Sure. I'll go ahead and drop my email address in the chat as well. If anyone wants to reach out later or talk privately, we can definitely follow up there. Or like I mentioned, ceffleet@arb.ca.gov email address is probably the best place to get your compliance questions answered. You can let them know about your fleet scenario, the situation you're in, and they can help you lay out your different options. They're also open to taking meetings if it's easier to talk online or in person. Yeah, thank you guys so much for the time. And then I'll go ahead and hand it over to Dylan to discuss the zero emission forklift regulation.
Fantastic. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me here. My name is Dylan Seidner. Much like Adil and our next speaker, I'm from the outreach section of CARB, and basically what my job often entails, and if you see me throughout the state, hello again, but I attend a lot of our events throughout the state, trying to get as much information out into the public's hands about our upcoming regulations, our incentives, and what needs to happen to assist in compliance. And so the reason we're talking today about the zero emission forklift regulation is that we've got the perfect niche here and the perfect audience. Most of our folks here are from state or local government fleets. They're managing those types of fleets, and this regulation specifically applies to those folks. And then second, this regulation, it's not completely new, but it does have some requirements that are coming into play here in 2026. So my goal today here is just to get you the basics on this regulation so that you can kind of understand the high level stuff and then figure out what you need to do next to get your fleet sorted. So hang tight with me here. Let me get to the next slide. All right, so some big picture overviews for this regulation. It was adopted in 2024 in June. And as I said, some of those first steps in the regulation are coming into play here in 2026. Really, it achieves a couple different things, though. So first, this regulation, much like all of our regulations, it's there really to protect public health from air pollution, achieve those types of benefits while also achieving our climate goals. And really how this regulation works is that it's going to achieve those emission reductions by phasing out forklifts that are using fossil fuels. And specifically, we're talking about large spark ignition engines, and those are usually gasoline fueled, propane, or natural gas. So some good news here is that already there's about half of the forklifts in these classifications are already zero emission. Most of them are battery electric. Something like 68,000 of them already exist out in California. I'm sorry, almost 80,000 of them are already out in use in California. The market is there, so there's models that are available. There's decades of testing and advances in battery and fuel cell tech. And really the big picture for you as a user to consider is that the operating cost over time is going to be lower than an internal combustion engine. And that's due to the lower cost on energy and the lower maintenance costs, just due to the fact that you're not servicing those types of engines. But that said, there are some additional considerations for charging and infrastructure that we'll talk about further on. So big picture wise, kind of what are we talking about here? And if we have these vehicles in our fleet, what should we be looking for? So the types of forklifts we're talking about today are going to be considered large spark ignition, or LSI. It's typically forklifts that are powered by propane, natural gas, or gasoline, and two different classifications. We've got the class 4, which those are solid or cushion tires, typically your indoor use forklifts, and then class 5, which are pneumatic tires, and those are indoor outdoor use typically. So I said that there are some considerations here for 2026. The first couple things that are going to need to happen this year are, one, that in 2026, starting January 1st, so we've already passed that date, but fleet operators that are subject to this regulation may not acquire LSI forklifts. That's the first point. Second is that there's a requirement to initiate discussion with utility providers by March of this year, and I'll give you some details on that. And then third is to get started on the reporting process for this regulation. And if you're familiar at all with some of our other off-road regulations, this regulation also uses the DOORS reporting system. So you may have some familiarity already with using this system. Also, a quick note on this one. So the first point was fleet operators may not acquire LSI forklifts. Oh, look, I can use a laser pointer here. So, right. I do want to point out that there are a lot of details that go into that, and we'll touch on some of the high level ones here, but no need for immediate concern because there are some flexibility aspects in this regulation, and also similar to ACF, which we just heard about, there's some exemptions and extensions as well. And lastly, similar to ACF, I just want to make this statement here is that California state and local government fleets shall comply with the regulation, and CARB has not sought authorization for the regulation from the US EPA, and so therefore will not enforce the regulation against private fleets. Just because this regulation, similar to ACF, had a component that was specific to private fleets, and that element is not currently in place. So there's our note for that. Let's move on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, some initial reporting deadlines and considerations for you this year. So first and foremost, March 31st, I had mentioned that's going to be the initiate discussions with utility providers, and that's coming up in my next slide as well too. Reporting deadlines are here as well too. So depending if you have a large fleet of forklifts, I will define that a bit later on, or a small fleet of forklifts, you have a reporting deadline that's coming up this year. And then also there was that initial no purchase of 2026 LSI forklifts as well too. From here in this, you can kind of see that we start a phase out process, and I'll give you guys some more details on that. But basically from here on out, starting January 2028 is when the phase out process starts, depending upon your size of fleet, the class of forklift, and the weight class, and it keeps moving on out from there, with a regular reporting timeline of either April or September, depending upon the size of your fleet. Okay, so step one here on the initiate discussions with utility providers. So the consideration on this one is that there should be some contact with a utility provider by March 31st, 2026, regarding potential electrical service installations or upgrades. What does this mean? Basically, this regulation is going to have a phase out process. And the presumption is that some of those vehicles are going to be replaced with either battery electric zero emission, fuel cell zero emission, or some other type of zero emission forklift. And in some instances, there may be considerations for both infrastructure development that has to happen at your site, charging development that has to happen at your site, or service changes that have to happen with your utility provider. It's entirely possible that none of this has to happen as well too. But in consideration, what we're trying to get folks to do here is to consider what their current fleet looks like, estimate what the number and types of chargers are going to be, possible new power requirements that may have to happen, and any new sources of potential demand. So very similar to a lot of the considerations folks are already putting into play for advanced clean fleets, is that there's going to be a new fleet of electrified vehicles. There has to be a little bit of forethought and consideration, especially with utility providers, to ensure that there's going to be enough service available there. Those details and those specifics are there in the regulation order. I've put a link here that can be shared later on, but it talks about those specific types of information that need to be discussed or shared between yourself in your planning process and your utility provider. Okay, and as I mentioned before, here is the phase out schedule. And similar to the table previously on advanced clean fleets, it may look complex, but let's break it down here. So first, there are two different sizes of fleets for this regulation that we mentioned. There were small fleets and large fleets. Those small fleets are those that have 25 or less forklifts. Large is 26 or more. And then we have categories here of our forklifts. We've got our class 4s here. And then in this box over here is our class 5s. We have a weight difference as well here too. So you can see how everything breaks down. The bigger point I want to show folks here, though, is that the phase-out process, what this looks like. So if we're taking a look here at this specific class of forklift in this specific weight class, starting in 2028, we're going to be phasing out 2018 model year and older forklifts. And you can see a similar pattern kind of repeats here dependent upon the fleet size, the class of the forklift, and the weight class here. We do have some differing, you can see some differing dates in terms of how old is the initial model year when it starts to phase out and what that sort of timeline looks like for each one of these. But that said, that's the general process for all of these categories here. A few points of consideration though. First phase out for this regulation, it's going to start in January of 2028. So we're still 2+ years away from any phase out process. And then you can see these double stars here on each one of these first phase out years. So the note on this one here is that these are eligible for phase out percentage caps. And basically what that means is that in certain situations, say if you are a small fleet, your first year, all of your forklifts are 2018 model year or older, you're subject to that initial phase out process. I'm sorry, this is a large fleet right here that I'm showing. There is a cap there that only 50% of your total fleet can be phased out starting this first year. So if you have a very old fleet, there is some flexibility into making this process a little easier to deal with as the phase out starts. However, that said, we put this stuff out here so that you can understand what the phase out schedule is going to look like in the future. Okay, and very similar to what I explained previously, but this shows some of the years and timelines here. You can see that the earliest phase outs are going to start with those large fleets. Those are going to be fleets that have 26 or more LSI forklifts in them. Then starts some of the small fleet phase out. Then starts some of the class 5 phase out. And then start some of the class 4 heavy phase out as well too. So you can see how this adjusts out basically with a more aggressive timescale for the larger fleets and a slightly less aggressive timescale for these other fleets. Okay, and finally, a high-level overview of some of the exemptions and extensions that are out there. And remember, the phase-out process is not starting until 2028. So take these into consideration now and plan for them as they come up in the future. But very similar to a lot of the style of exemptions and extensions you saw from ACF, these are specific and of course specific to this regulation, but they mimic a lot of the similar considerations that we had for advanced clean fleets. Some of the extensions I just want to talk about real quickly. Basically, there's ones where hey, there's flexibility here to sort of allow you to have what could be considered a delivery delay if you have problems getting delivery of equipment in a timely manner for a zero emission forklift. Common ones that we will likely see in the future are going to be infrastructure related delays or site electrification delays. And then operational extensions. And those are similar to other sort of types of extensions and exemptions where operationally, if you're unable to be served by what the existing market and what the existing forklifts out there are, you can petition for one of these extensions as well too. Either way, I wanted to point you here to the fact sheets. There's only a few up there currently specific to the extensions, but take a look and see if you have anything that currently applies to those. Finally, just the last set of slides here that has further information. This is our main page for the regulation itself. That's the zero emission forklifts page. If you're interested in learning more about reporting, this is the reporting system that's going to be used for this regulation. Heck of a URL here, but you can definitely get to this from our off-road zone or from the ZEF regulation website. All our customer service for this regulation is through the ZE forklifts at arb.ca.gov email address and phone. I believe this is the DOORS reporting hotline, but they can also provide assistance on this regulation. This is the 877 phone number here. So high level overview, but thank you for your time today. Really appreciate being here. I will hold it there for questions. And I believe we also have one of our technical staff here who is from the zero emission forklift regulation, should any questions pop up that I'm not able to answer today. Next.
All right. So my name is Andrew Reyes. I'm an air resource engineer for California Air Resources Board. I'm going to be going over the Clean Truck Check regulation. So what is Clean Truck Check? So Clean Truck Check is a program we use to ensure emissions control systems are operating properly. There are a few ways this is done: emissions testing and reporting of that data, monitoring of vehicles along roads, and industry verification of compliance. So what vehicles are regulated under Clean Truck Check? These are going to be non-gasoline heavy-duty vehicles over 14,000 pounds GVWR that are operating on California public roads and highways. Now, some examples of regulated vehicles. To go into further detail, non-gasoline would be diesel, diesel hybrid, and alternative fuel vehicles. Here are a few examples of vehicles subject to Clean Truck Check, such as trucks, motorhomes, buses, including school buses, cargo vans, tow trucks, government-owned vehicles, such as those with a California exempt plate, and personal vehicles. Next, there are some excluded vehicles from Clean Truck Check. Emergency vehicles defined by California Vehicle Code Section 165 or Health and Safety Code Section 1797.84. Gasoline heavy-duty vehicles already under BAR's smog check program. Out-of-state vehicles operating under a governor's executive order or emergency declaration. Zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles, tactical military vehicles, and permanent historical vehicles defined by California Vehicle Code Section 5004. All right, so to put it simply, there are 3 steps that you're going to need to take to complete the process. Step number 1, report your vehicles in CARB's online Clean Truck Check vehicle inspection system. Step 2, pay the annual compliance fee per vehicle. And step 3, submit your passing emissions compliance tests. Now for step 1, for reporting vehicles into CTC Viz, you'll create an account and enter all required vehicle information at the website underlined on the slide. If you have an account in Truckers, which is CARB's truck regulation upload compliance and reporting system, you can pull the data straight from there. And here's a screenshot of the portal where you can log in, create an account, look up compliance by entity or vehicle, view a credentialed tester list, as well as other helpful links. Now for step 2, paying the annual compliance fee will be done through the CTC Viz account. The annual fee may change each year, which is calculated by the California Consumer Price Index. Payments can be made by credit card, debit card, or e-checks, and we're now able to do batch payments as well. And finally, step 3, the emissions compliance testing. This will apply to most vehicles and is determined by your vehicle's DMV registration due date. The first deadline will be the registration due date. Then the second deadline will be 6 months from the first deadline. You'll only be able to submit your compliance tests 90 days prior to your deadline. So the previous deadlines were determined by the DMV registration date. However, if you have state exempt plates, your deadline will be determined by the last digit of your VIN, or your vehicle's identification number. So check the last digit of your VIN and compare it to the chart for your first and second deadlines. Again, compliance tests can only be submitted 90 days prior to your deadline. The annual compliance fee will be due in the bolded months on the chart. There are a few vehicles that are required to test once annually. Those will be personal motorhomes and agricultural vehicles registered in California. Their annual deadline is determined by the vehicle's DMV registration due date. So what is an agricultural vehicle? These will be vehicles operated by a farming business used exclusively in agricultural operations to transport agricultural products to the first point of processing. This includes packing houses, slaughterhouses, cotton gins, nut haulers, shellers, processors, dehydrators, lumber mills, feed grain mills, and biomass facilities. There are a couple ways to determine how your vehicle will be tested. For vehicles equipped with onboard diagnostics, or OBD, allows the ability to plug in an electronic monitoring device to receive data. This can be conducted for 2013 and newer diesel or diesel hybrid engines, and 2018 and newer alternative fuel or hybrid alternative fuel engines. For vehicles that do not have an OBD, 2012 and older diesel engines will need to perform an opacity test and visual inspection of the emissions control equipment. 2017 and older alternative fuel engines only require a visual inspection of the emissions control equipment. Clean Truck Check requires credentialed testers to submit tests with CARB-approved testing equipment. Searching and verifying credentialed testers can be done through CARB's CTC Viz portal. If you are interested in becoming a credentialed tester yourself, there is a free online training and exam. Once you pass, it is good for 2 years. There is an option to use a continuously connected OBD telematics device. If using this device, no credentialed testing would need to be done. For Clean Truck Check compliance tests, only CARB-approved devices can be used for testing. This is to ensure the testing software is compatible with CARB's databases. You can find a list of approved devices on our Clean Truck Check webpage or through the helpful links on the CTC Viz portal. Now, scanning the QR code here will take you directly to our webpage. There, you can find resources to help you create and manage your account. This includes credentialed tester accounts as well. There are also recorded training videos and past Q&A webinars you can take advantage of. And lastly, we have a few tools here if you need assistance. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at hdim@arb.ca.gov. I want to thank everyone for taking the time and tuning in and learning about some regulations today. Thank you.